Hello and welcome to the Cherry on Top YouTube channel. I'm Jessica and today's video is for our November YouTube hop. The prompt for this month is texture paste, so I had the goal to use 3 different types of texture paste. This is one of my last pages that I have to fill in this art journal, and in this journal it's really been about experimenting and using a lot of mixed media, so I'm carrying that through to this page as well, just using some texture paste as I do it. I like to work with a lot of layers on pages like this, so I'm starting with some of these book pages. They're just from an old book that I didn't think anybody would read anymore, so I am gluing them onto the page with some multimedia matte, and then gluing over some of the edges as well so I can make sure that it really stays on well. And next I am using some gesso to gesso over the page. I had a bit of that green blob on the left side page that bled over from the page on the other side. So I wanted to cover as much of that as I could, and then just a little bit of the book edges, so it just had a little bit of the words, but you can't really read them. So for this YouTube hop, there is 4 videos in the hop, this one included, and all of the links are in the description below, and what you have to do is leave a comment on each of the 4 videos and you will be in the running to win a $10 ACOT gift card. So make sure to hop along, and I'm sure there will be a great inspiration along the hop, and hopefully you'll see some new ways to use texture paste or just pick up other inspiration. I always find new things that I learn on these hops. And now I am also adding a layer of Tim Holtz collage paper, which I also used the multimedia mat to glue down as well. And here is where my first texture paste comes in. This is some Crackle Paste, which if you haven't used it, I think is really cool because it gives little crackle textures as it dries. And I am using a Sizzix texture tool to apply it. And I'm using a side that just gives it little lines, so there will be little cracked lines down this page. For me, working in this art journal is all about play and experimenting. I usually don't have a plan when I get going. I know I just want to use a lot of different mixed media and see how things look, and most of the time these pages I end up liking them, so just have fun with your pages. Don't take anything too seriously. I am using some white paint to tone down the background a little bit, and I mixed in some brown paint into it so it wasn't like a stark white on this page because I am going for a more vintage feel. And now adding some Prima liquid acrylics, which are some of my favorite paints, and this is the Prussian blue, which is probably my favorite color. This paint is really cool because you can use it like a watercolor paint and water it down, but once it dries it's permanent like an acrylic paint. So you really get the best of both worlds with this one, and I ended up using this paint a lot throughout this journal, and I really like how you can get these deep, rich colors as well. I tried to concentrate most of the paint, especially the darker paint, around the edges, kind of to frame the piece a bit, and I'm thinking I might have a focal point somewhere more in the center. Now I grabbed a Tim Holtz frame, and I noticed while flipping through a vellum book that this little piano looked like it would fit perfectly inside this frame, so I decided that's what would be in the frame. And I'm going to set that aside. I know I want to use it somewhere on this page. And now I want to use my second type of texture paste. This is the matte transparent paste. I debated on if I wanted to use the glossy paste, which I kind of wish I did because when the matte was dried I could hardly see it. You can still have the texture and see it when it's up very close, but more from a distance, I think, because I had so much else going on in the background that it was lost a little bit. But I still think it adds to the page because it's another layer, and even if you can't see every layer still adds something whether it's something in the background or some texture, so I'm just going with it. Next, I painted this tag the same color that I was using to paint the white mixed with brown on the page, and I'm adding some distress ink around the edges of the tag. And last but not least, my third type of texture paste is the Jewel Effects paste. This is also from Prima, and I am using it in the color Sparkling Onyx. And this has become some of my favorite texture paste and just paint in general. It feels like there are pieces of sand in it, so it's really grainy, but it shows up so nicely, and it has a more subtle shimmer to it, which I just really enjoy. Now I'm starting to layer on some of the pieces that I want to use, still going with that more vintagey style, and just playing around with the composition a little bit. I originally wasn't going to use a photo with this layout, but when I used the little piano, I was thinking about my grandpa who used to play piano and tune pianos, so I thought it was more fitting if I used a picture with him in it. So that's my grandpa and grandma in the picture. And the little saying says, "Travel over the world to find the beautiful," which I also thought was very fitting because my grandpa came from Sweden to America, which is where he met my grandma. So I really like how this layout is coming together. I didn't have a plan with it, but it ended up having more meaning than what I originally intended it to, which I think is a great thing about crafting and just keeping your mind open to whatever happens along the way of your creative process. One technique that I've found using this journal in other pages is that when you have texture paste, like used through a stencil, and then stamp on top of it, the stamp usually only shows up in the raised areas, so you can get a partially stamped image, which I think worked out pretty cool with this more scripty stamp that I used. Most of the embellishments that I'm using are from 49 and Market and Finnabair, and I have a little bit of Tim Holtz in there, and those are my three go-to companies when I want to make a more vintage or distressed looking layout or page. I have found through a bit of testing that vellum does not do well with wet glue, so I usually now just use cherry tape on it because it's clear and you can't really see it, and it sticks a lot better, and most importantly, it doesn't warp. So for this little piece, I used cherry tape behind the vellum piano and then some wet glue to stick the middle piece on a little better. I know I absolutely love working with texture paste. Using it through stencils is probably my favorite way to use them. Because there's so many awesome stencils, and I like that texture paste just adds an extra layer of dimension to a piece. The only thing with using the texture paste is that they take so long to dry, so sometimes I like working on a couple different projects at once when using texture paste. That way it can dry and you don't feel rushed about it. Or you can always pull out the heat gun and speed things along that way. I added some sequins to connect the two focal points a little bit, and that was it for this page. Thanks for watching, and make sure to check out the rest of the hop.